Leslie is currently living in Barcelona with her husband and her two children. Two children. Hello, and welcome to the Weeder Life podcast. I'm your host, Erica Weederlight, and I am the CEO and founder of We the Light. I help humans who feel inadequate, broken, self-conscious, and shamed around their sexuality to reclaim their aliveness, their power, and to have a renewed relationship to pleasure while preparing themselves to feel hella confident to date others and themselves. AKA, I'm guiding people to live their #best lives. I have to give you a fair warning. I do unfortunately swear like a drunken sailor, so if you do have little ones by you, just be sure to pop in some earbuds. All right, friends, let's buckle up and let's rock it to this week's episode. I say this every episode, but I am genuinely so freaking jazzed for this amazing guest. I was going to say comrade because we do this work together. Sister, friend. I am super jazzed for this amazing guest we have today. We're going to go into so many topics that we both hold near and dear to our hearts. Without further ado, my friend, Leslie Saglio. So I want to give you a little cliff note. She's done amazing, fabulous things, and her expertise has spanned nearly 2 decades, from Hollywood executive to startup co-founder to living overseas. Leslie understands what it takes to thrive in a stressful and challenging global environment, which we literally have to talk about. She is a TEDx speaker, certified trauma-informed master coach, and founder of the Feminine Power and Purpose Immersion, transforming the lives of women to stop playing small so they can make a bigger impact and income. Holy shit. She's also earned her Bachelor's of Science degree from the University of Southern California Marshall School of Business. And Leslie has been featured in the US and internationally in numerous media and publications, including Soho House, Well and Good, Mind Body Green, just to name a few. She's been everywhere. She's amazing. She is a Filipino-American, Los Angeles native, and London expat. Leslie is currently living in Barcelona with her husband and her two children. Two children. I can go on and on about what a fabulous human we have here today. But without further ado, I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you, Erica, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy I really am so happy you're here. And I know, we've talked about this before, but so much of what we love in our work really, bridges over, and we share a passion for so many of the same things.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, what an honor.
I want it, because I'm a kid in a candy shop, I really want to get into the pleasure conversation. I want to get in there. But before we do, something that I want to pause for a second and breathe. And I really want to highlight your work and the TEDx talk that you gave, which was so fucking amazing and beautiful. And something that really resonated with me, that when I would go to workshops and retreats, it's like a lot of energy, it's kind of like, bah! Like everyone's energy is all over the place. And I loved how you started with us just breathing and getting into our body. And that was just so gorgeous and helpful. And I know that has been a deeply healing modality for me and my anxiety journey. Can you talk to us about what it means for you to have a relationship to meditation, breath, slowing down? Can we go there for a moment?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for bringing that up. That coming, breath, meditation, that's been something that has been a big love of mine. It's not something I grew up with. I grew up in the States and this very high-strung, high-octave lifestyle. And it wasn't until actually, through my life, something something had happened and it made me question how I was living, how I was raising my children, and realizing that that there is a mind body connection, and that the one thing we physiologically can control, because at the end of the day, we can't control what happens outside of us. We can't control how long we may or may not be locked down. We can't control, what our kids may, be doing out there. But what we can control is what happens inside and the meaning that we give to our life experiences. And to that end, one things that we can control physiologically is our breath. So when we, either through breath work or through meditation, or just simply taking 2 conscious breaths, we actually can start to calm and regulate our nervous system. We can come out of that sympathetic nervous system where we're on fight or flight, and we feel like there's a perceived threat around us. And that's when, our cortisol starts to shoot up. That's when we actually start to feel stress. And so just through simple breathing, moving, from our head into our body, into our heart, and which is a lot of what I do is, embodiment, coming into the body. Not only can we start to calm our nervous system and come from a more calm place, but we can actually come from a more empowered place. So it's through the practice of coming into the body, knowing intuitively what feels right, what doesn't feel right, that we can actually become and be more empowered in our life.
Oh, that's so good. And this is such a big question or big thing, but something that really attracts me, one of the many things to your work, is the idea of thriving versus surviving. And having a relationship to expansion in a crazy world and a busy world. And it sounds like breath is one of those tools for you to stay grounded. Is that correct? Is breath and being embodied a big key element to you thriving?
Absolutely. I know it sounds so simple. I know it sounds so simple, but it is. It's so simple, but yet a lot of us are not actually breathing deeply and breathing consciously. And it's through the practice, it's through just, flexing that muscle and doing it, that you can and experiencing it, that you can realize, oh, wow, I actually feel different. I actually feel more calm. I actually feel more clear. And it's through the experience, I believe, and it's not through reading books and the theory and listening to podcasts, but actually doing it, having your body feel it and experience it, that's what's very powerful and transformational, which is why most of my events, I start with a short grounding practice, a short centering process, like I did in my TEDx talk, where I have people just check in and just breathe and notice the quality and texture of their breath and the quality and texture of their mind, and how that may be different from the start of just a short breathing practice.
I love that. And I also, this is a little bit of a segue sidebar, but I love what you talk about, because this is my belief too. And, there's evidence and et cetera, but that our thoughts really do create our reality. And you brought this up in the TEDx talk. I don't want to butcher how you said it, but talking about those thoughts become emotions, become actions. Can you, because I think so often in the spiritual realm, we kind of thoughts become things, and people get really turned off by that. It feels overwhelming and so this is not from a place of perfection or, it's from, I want to put that little disclaimer on it, but can you talk to us about how you've been mindful of your relationship to your thoughts and emotions, and how that's helped create something beautiful on the outside, if you will?
Yeah. Well, what I've learned through my own deep commitment to personal development and realizing and experiencing the mind-body connection is that our emotions are simply energy. That's what it is. It's energy in motion. Chinese traditional medicine says that one is neither good nor bad. It's we put this stigma that, this is negative, this is positive. But in fact, the human experience, Mother Earth herself, we live and experience life through polarity. So we don't know love without fear. We don't know pain without joy. And it's if we can learn to have the tools and practices to move through those that energy, those emotions, then we can not only become more empowered and transmute, whether it's pain into purpose or pain into a passion and a life more full of meaning, but also, we start to become non-attached. It's through the attachment to a certain outcome or to a certain feeling that's where the stress and anxiety and overwhelm comes through. We think that we should be doing something, we should be feeling this way, it should be happening in a certain time frame with a certain person. And that's just not how it works. That's not how life works. It's like the universe, or however you call your higher power, God, nature, the divine. There's something so much bigger than we can possibly imagine and have planned for ourselves. And it's really not until we look back and we start to connect the dots that we realize, oh my God, that thing that we thought was quote unquote negative or like super difficult and challenging, and like, why did that happen? We're like, oh my gosh, because of that, then I made this choice, or I realized this much courage and strength that I had to do something different, or to, just to move and live outside my comfort zone. So I think the emotions, and we know this with our work with Mama Gina, is that there's so much beauty and healing and power through actually feeling it. So it's having a space, a safe container, whether it's through a community of other people that are doing this work, or having a mentor, a guide, to just feel them, to feel them. Because a lot of what we're doing as adults is we have all these suppressed emotions from when we were younger that we weren't able to have a space to be sad, to be angry. And so they're just stacked up one on top of the other. And as adults, we may have a fight with someone, but really it's not about, that they didn't put the dishes in the dishwasher. It's about something else. It's about something that maybe happened with my mother or my father. But like, what's happening here is that we are in this trauma loop where it's like we sense we have this perceived threat that either we don't feel safe, we have to protect ourselves. We're basically, most of us, myself included, until we do the work, are like these little kids in these adult bodies. Yeah. Until we actually do the work and we raise our consciousness, because essentially what we're acting out is our subconscious mind is 95% running our life. And so when we do this work, we're just, if you think about the iceberg theory, if you think about an iceberg and you see the tip of it on top of the water, and it's about 5% of what's actually underneath the surface of the water, there's like this big block of ice. And that's what's happening. That's what's running our life in our mind, is that we have this subconscious belief and programming that's been formed most likely by the age of 7, definitely by the age of 12, where whatever happened to us when we were children, it's formed our beliefs around money, love, safety, all the things. And this is what's running the show. 95% of what's running our life is that subconscious programming, those emotions, those things that we probably, most of us, because of cultural society and, our generational patterns, that we didn't have a safe place to really feel, or someone reflect back to us that it's okay not to be okay. And so what's happening, and I think it's amazing, it's a beautiful time right now, is that there's like this huge raise in consciousness about mental health and the mind-body connection, and just incredible resources that obviously our parents and parents didn't have. So I know it feels like a really chaotic time right now on the world, and I get that. But I also feel that it's an incredible time to be living on the planet, because literally there's more light that's coming in to the planet right now, and that's the age that we're living in.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said, I always say, and I've been saying this a lot on the podcast, about like, it's kind of wild that so many people, like years ago when we were doing this work, it was like so unique, and it was so, and now it's like so many people are invested in mental health, and it's like you said, there is so much going on right now, and there is this other amazing thing that is happening with mental health and awakening and mind-body connection. So I so agree with you on that. That is like, it's nice that this is not like, on the underground anymore. Like this used to be like very underground, and it's really cool that this is now mainstream, and we're having conversations about this and kids are meditating in school. Like, it's awesome that this, yeah, is becoming more normalized. I want to ask you, I know we talked about like feeling our emotion with the iceberg analogy, feeling our emotions and breath work for you, like personally. How do you what tools do you love? What tools do you bring, your people through, like your clients and audience members, to get like you said, to not keep living in that iceberg, like that big percent. Like, how do you help others? How do you help yourself to like live, like you said, more consciously versus from that other place?
Yeah, great question. Well, one of them, like we discussed, is breath work. And another one that we haven't discussed yet is, again, helping to move in from the head into the body, either through dancing or shaking.
Yes.
So a big thing that animals do, and what animals do, if you think about them, is when they've experienced some type of trauma, or like they've experienced something, they shake it off. They literally shake off the trauma and then they just go about their business. But as humans, like, we're actually programmed to do the same thing. But again, we've been taught either be a good girl, don't cry, or, be a tough boy. Don't, like, we've been taught to suppress those emotions. And so instead of being able to feel them, again, we're just acting out as adults, either lack of safety or connection or intimacy or just all these different things. And so if we can learn to, and we don't have to identify necessarily what is it, again, we don't need to have an attachment, but just to, I do it daily. I do dance breaks in between like my coaching client calls, between like facilitating events, like literally just shaking off the energy, the stress, the anxiety from the day. And I find that people tend to find this actually easier, because it's difficult to just sit down and try not to think about anything, because we can't actually. If you're not thinking about anything, that means you're dead. So
Right.
sometimes it's actually, and this is what yoga was about, it was about the physical practice, the asana, and then sitting in meditation. It was like through moving the body first. And then you'll be able to sit still and be able to, just to be in silence. Like, we can't just, even for my own personal practice, I don't go straight into meditation. I have to do either breath work, I have to do shaking, I have to do something to help me as a human being get out of my head and into my body. And then I can rest in being still, because my nervous system is regulated, it's calmed down, and whatever stress, anxiety, energy, it's somehow, it's released itself. It's given itself an exit point. So I found that really helpful, not just for myself, but also for my clients. And that's something that, you can look it up and you can just think about how animals are. It's like, they shake it off, literally. And so it's an easy thing to do. And, that's something similar that we do with Mama Gina in the swamping practice, is feeling the emotions, getting into your body and just allowing yourself to feel. And then obviously the last part of that is to always end in turn on, always end in feeling good and pleasure filled. Because sometimes it can feel really heavy. It's like, oh my God, okay, I cried, I screamed, I did all the things. And then it feels like, it can feel heavy. It can feel lighter because you've released, but it can also feel heavy. So a lot of the work that I do is you want to end with feeling good. So if it's not like, whether it's a beautiful piece of fruit or taking a bath or eating some, I don't know, just something super gorgeous and pleasure-filled that's for you. And you really want to, now that you've released those emotions, now you can start to, now that there's space, you can form those new neural pathways and have your body start to experience, that's what it feels like to feel good. And from that place, what's your question?
Yes.
What do you want to ask? And I haven't found one time yet, either with myself or a client, where they didn't know.
Yes. Oh my God, there's literally so many good things you just said. Like, so I'm like, oh my God, like I can poke so many great holes, because I'm like, wait, I want to go here, I want to go here. But something that I think you articulated really well is one of my favorite things that you say is about and we'll get in that to a second with the resistance and pleasure, but holy shit, I love what you said about like how we do with the swamp. Like you always have to end with pleasure. And I know for me and sometimes for my clients too, like we're very resistant. We're like, okay, I cried, I raged into a pillow. That was good, but there's like this, I'm like, there's a reason, there's a purpose for the turn on. There's a reason for the dance breaks. It's not just to put on Spice Girls to dance, though we love Spice Girls to dance. Like there's actually evidence behind this, but I love what you said, and I'm creating or connecting a bridge here, which is we can't ask ourselves those. We can, but it's harder to ask ourselves those intuitive questions or go inward when we don't have that pleasure. And I think what you articulated so well, and I just want to highlight it, is that pleasure really is the balm that really soothes our nervous system. Because we can say pleasure, 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 but it really is that balm. And I also want to say this too, like for me, I have, and I talk about this on the podcast a lot since I've been, and I'm curious for you too, like I've been doing the pleasure work for so long. And sometimes when I'm out of it, like my brain an ego wants to go like, do the pleasure work, do the pleasure work, do the pleasure work. And I think you named something so beautifully, like it would feel really unsafe to jump from unregulated, to like, I'm like, holy shit, like unregulated to be like, yes, I'm going to be in my pleasure. It's like, oh, and I think you named that so beautifully, like that, the shake off, like the animals, that's where we need it. Like we can't jump from unregulated to pleasure. That would feel so unsafe. Like we need that like cathartic shake, that cathartic breath. Like we need that to be like, here I am. Now I can, you're that beautiful bridge. Holy shit.
Yeah. The healing is in the safety. Healing is in safety. And I can't stress this even more. I mean, I have clients who are like, well, what should I do? This and that. I'm like, if you're in a situation or environment where you don't feel, just get out.
Yes.
She's like, well, what tool should I do? I'm like, you don't need to have a conversation. Remove yourself from the room, remove yourself from the house. We just had the holidays here and clients, and I was like, you don't need to do anything until you feel safe, because what's happening here is that there is a younger part, a little girl, like we'll just use me for instance, little Leslie, that's saying, wait a minute, I don't feel safe. No, what about me? And if we're trying to minimize her, again, we're suppressing her emotions. We're telling her, no, be a good girl, be quiet. We need to be composed. We need to be good. We're here for other people. It's like, what? And then that's how we become people pleasers. That's how we forget, like, oh my gosh, our pleasure, because we don't even know how to locate that, because we're putting other people and other things before ourselves, because there's that little person inside of us, like, is so in need of some love and attention. And it's not too late. Like we absolutely can inner parent or inner mother or inner father our younger selves. And it's never too late to have a healthy childhood. Never too late.
I love that. And to go off, oh, it's so good. Thank you for voicing that. And I think that's like how we talked about, especially going back to the pleasure thing. If we're going to talk about inner child, it would feel really unsafe. Like you said, if they want to throw a temper tantrum, or if they just want to be heard, like, I feel this, and we're like, feel pleasure. It's like, that is not kind, even though it's pleasure, even though it's joy. It feels, like jaunting if a child is like, hey, I really want to cry right now, or I feel really overwhelmed, and we're like, can you feel pleasure? So it's like, oh my gosh. So I really thank you you really bridged something beautiful. This was really beautiful and helpful how you articulated this, that even though we want to feel joy and happiness and pleasure and all of that, I love that you are also we're giving a space for our inner child to also be on board and have, like, what are they feeling? What do they need? And yes, of course, like you said, of course we're going to end with turn on. Of course we're going to end with pleasure. But can we check in with them and see what's up before, like, forcing them into feel joy, feel happy? And I think so often, we feel like I have to be happy. I have to feel joy. It's like, of course, like that's great. And there's another conversation that's going on, which is what you said with the inner parenting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's how trauma happens, is that if there's something happening to the stimuli where it feels too much, too fast, or too soon. And so we
Mm.
never want to put ourselves or our clients or anyone in a situation where they're being triggered and then they're
Yeah.
just back in a trauma loop. So everybody's obviously, like, their life, everybody's experience will be different. Um, so absolutely, it's about holding that space for what does your younger self need and want right now. And so that's why, when I go into a session with a client or I'm holding space for a group, I never know what's going to happen. I think the most powerful coaches, they always send the clients back to themselves. So I'm guiding the
Yes.
session, I'm guiding the coaching session if it's a group. But essentially, again, it's about them becoming empowered, right? So have them check in. What do they need right now?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they know. It's about creating that space for them to feel, to heal, and to really trust their own inner experience.
Yes, yes. And that's why I mean, of course, but for me, and I'm sure same for you, that's why I've always been attracted to teachers, coaches. This is a huge part of my practice. Like you said, we are a guide, and I never want to be anyone's like guru. Like that's why I never, with coaches and teachers that are like you have to keep coming back to them. For me, that's always, and I hope for the listeners too, like that's always a red flag. If the power is with them, it's like red flags off. It's about us creating space for them to keep coming back to themselves. And so I love that you articulated that. I have to get to my favorite quote of yours. I have to get to it, which is resistance to pleasure is a trauma response. Oh my God. That's so good. Can you talk to us about that? And can we go into that?
Hmm. Yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah.
This was a big part of my own personal journey and work, obviously. Um, and so when we talk about pleasure, let's just put a pin there for a second. Some people may think, oh, erotic pleasure. Yes, that's great. Of course, that's great. But we're not just talking about dripping wet, like I'm thinking about sex all the time. We're thinking about what actually lights you up. What
Yes.
gives you that feeling of your life force energy pulsating through you, where you're in your zone of genius, or time, stand still, or you are doing the thing that you want to do, not by someone else's definition or what you should be doing. And so when a woman, we'll just speak specifically to women, but of course this can go for anyone, when she ignores her pleasure, then unconsciously, she starts to become angry. She starts to become resentful, and she mistakes her purpose as the agenda of other people. And a lot of the time, she may believe that her only function is to serve the masculine, to serve in her job, to serve for her family, to serve for others. And yet, when a woman connects to her pleasure, she breaks free from that. She breaks free from those generational patterns, and she, obviously, like we mentioned, in our mother's mother, like they just didn't have those resources, right? So we're speaking about, this is an actually incredible time to be able to be doing this work. And so, yeah, it's just we all have experienced our own individual experience of life, and yet each experience has left some type of imprint on us and has shaped us in some way or another. And talking about generations of our female lineage, like we said, they didn't have these type of resources, and they didn't have this type of work to raise their consciousness, the whole mind body connection. And so what's happening here, literally on even a DNA level, we take the trauma, we take that on our own. It's think about our limiting beliefs is formed based on our mother's mother, like what were their beliefs, right? And so this resistance to pleasure is because a lot of the women in our ancestral lineage, they did not have access to their pleasure. They did not have access to their feminine power and their purpose and all the things. So we're going into like a bigger, the patriarchy and how most of the women, their life was in service to the masculine. And so here we are trying to break that generational pattern, not just for ourselves and our own family individually, but as a culture. It's trying to, break generational patterns, shake things up, and come back to the source of not just our pleasure as women, but our power.
Yeah,
pleasure is our power. And so if we can learn to accept that, because we have a part on our body that is solely dedicated to the purpose of pleasure, and it's there to remind us that we do not need anything or anyone else, and that we are the source of life. We are the source of creation, and that has been silenced and dumbed down and lost through thousands and thousands of years. And there is a huge awakening that's happening right now on the planet. This is not something new. It's just something that's been lost.
I love that. And I think you're making, first of all, gorgeous. And I also think you're making such a beautiful case, because I think so often when we talk about pleasure, there's thousands of objections to it. It's frivolous, it's silly, it's stupid, it's a treat at the end of a hard day. Like there's, we have so many, like you said, there's so many societal conditioning and stories. So we have so much resistance, like rightfully so, like it feels really scary. And I love how you brought up that in actuality, this is our power. So talk about we're empowerment, thriving, expansion. It's like this pleasure actually can be a direct pathway to that power. Can you talk more about, like, for you, how, like, your relationship to the relationship between pleasure and power, like what that looks like for you, how you've seen it transform your life or clients' lives?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just physiologically speaking, when we feel pleasure, when we're doing something that lights us up, it literally activates and increases those 4 feel-good chemicals of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So all those 4 feel-good chemicals, if we can do that and activate that naturally within ourselves, imagine the choices that you would make from that place instead of cortisol, being stressed, feeling overwhelmed, exhausted, burnout. I mean, the choices you would make, I mean, you can feel already how expansive one feels and how contracted the other one feels, how one feels more empowering and the other one feels like powered over. So it's physiologically, it's proven that when we're coming from that place, we actually not just feel good, but the choices we make are more. And I talk about this in my TEDx talk. You're able to make more healthy, empowered decisions. And that's essentially where I, not just for myself, but like clients to get to, is to come from that place, from that empowered place. And that's what it means to live a conscious life, right? In terms of the pleasure, for my own personal, like, how did that come about? Well, I did some pretty deep trauma work in person with a couple in California, and not realizing how much I had stored in my body. Like the first birth of my daughter was traumatic. The birth of me with my mother was traumatic. So there's all these things that we've kind of just, yeah, it's okay. We keep going on. I'm here. I've got a roof over my head. I got a good job. But, the mind forgets, but the body remembers. The body remembers. And so sometimes when we're experiencing pain or suffering or disease, we may feel like the body is punishing us. But in fact, the body is it's sending a message that there's something deeper underlying there that is coming up to be revealed and healed on an emotional, spiritual level. And so that a lot was a part of my work, and I felt was the missing link, because I've done so much inner work and plant medicine ceremonies. I mean, you name it, I've done everything. And it wasn't until I actually did the trauma work and sexual trauma specifically, it was the game changer, life changer. And I just knew that if I could somehow bring more of this work into the world, specifically with women, I mean, that's just world changing, world changing. And as I mentioned, I have a daughter, I also have a son. And, as a parent, I've heard this once from one of my coaches, no matter what we do, we'll always fuck up our children. No matter what we do, like, we're not perfect. We're all human. So I know, when she gets older, she'll probably say this or this traumatized her, however I responded or acted. I get that. And I'm also, just trying to do the best I can to raise my consciousness so that she can be a more empowered woman and he can be an empowered man, and just so I can leave this world a little bit better than the way that I came in it. So just going back to what I was saying, like, I know you mentioned we were talking about pleasure specifically, but the pleasure, our resistance to it, or not being able to locate what that is or what that feels like, and it being a trauma response is, yes, it's either something that we have experienced in our own lifetime. And I also believe, just from the generation of women in our family as well. I remember when I started doing this work, and out of one of the sessions, I just was crying for like days. I was grieving because I was like, fuck, all the pleasure I missed out on. And then I cried for my mother, and I'm like, all the pleasure she missed out on. I was mad and sad. I just had to feel it. And I was like, okay, we're doing this work now. I just had to feel it. But there was actually a process of grief, because I was like, decades I missed out. I felt like I missed out. But, I say this for myself, and I say it to my clients, like, you're exactly where you need to be. There's no FOMO here. It's never too late. It's never too early. We're exactly where we need to be. And I truly believe that.
That gave me the goosebumps, because same. I remember in Mama Gina's classroom, but also in retreats, I felt the same grief. I'm like, my mom, but my grandma, like, this is just like the grief of, like, she had a life full of suffering. And that is just so sad. Like, it's so sad. And I think, thank you for voicing that, because that for me too helps some of my, of course it's a body connection thing too, but for my brain, it helps some of my, like, stories, like I said, with the resistance. Like, I still hold, I've worked on this shit for how many years, and I still, hold some resistant stories. And thank you for voicing that, because it kind of takes me out of myself, if that makes sense. Like, it's like, okay, Erica, like, this is not, like, of course this is about you, but, like, this is something way bigger, and this is a bigger mission and purpose, versus, like, I can't feel my pleasure, I'm not worthy. It's like, hold on, honey. Like, I love you. And there's a bigger thing behind this. And thank you for voicing that, because it kind of gets me out of my own, with love, it gets me out of my own shit, Yeah. And I'm really grateful that you voiced that, because it's important to remember. I think even Mama Gina, in the beginning of her book, in her latest book, Pussy, in the beginning, I believe it's like the foreword is dedicated to all the women currently on the planet that will never have the privilege, the access, the ability to have this work because of where they are in the world, and resources, and if they're under, a toxic patriarchal society, like, and for that also helps me with love get out of my own way of, oh, I shouldn't. It's like, you have a deep privilege, Erica. You have a deep opportunity, and not from a place of love and making myself wrong, but I have an opportunity, and this work is just, it's beyond me and my family. It's for liberation for everyone.
Oh my gosh, so good. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, it's so much bigger than us.
Yeah.
And it's liberation for everyone. Yes, yes, yes. I mean, when we allow ourselves to feel pleasure, to be pleasure, we give we write the permission slip for our sisters and others. It's like,
Yes.
oh yeah, that looks good. Like, what's she doing? Like, oh, I like that, right? And if we give others permission, and reflect back, like what's possible in our sisters, and that's so important. And that's why, I always say this, that it's so important to also do this work with other sisters, because then you can really, your body can rest in knowing and feeling like, oh yeah, shit, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that felt this
Yes.
way. I'm not the only one that's going through this. Because again, a lot of what we're trying to break that generational pattern is to stop being a lone wolf. Stop going at it alone. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to be mad. It's okay to be sad. Be all of it. Bring all of it. All of it is welcome. And again, the healing is in the safety. So if we can have those spaces and containers where our body, literally our nervous system, can feel like, oh, that's what it feels like to be safe, to be seen, to be heard, and to be held. Oh my gosh. But again, you're forming those new neural pathways of like what's possible. And you want more of that. Do the work to get you more of that and bring that into your life and your work in the world.
Oh, I love it. That is so good. It's there's so many, I'm like, yes, like, and I want to bring up to it because I think this is powerful and evidence, and there really is something, and we've experienced it. Like when you see a human that's turned on again, not like the way we think, sure, that too, but like just like turned on, alive with their senses, safe in their body, versus shut off. And I remember actually leaving, one of Mama Gina's workshops, and I ran to Whole Foods. And I remember like I remember I was like, I am showing up as a different being because I'm like alive, I'm grounded, I'm centered, versus, and again, not making myself wrong, but versus the contracted version of myself. And so I think so often, again, we poo-poo pleasure because there's so much shit around, there's so much, stories and conditioning around it. It transforms how we show up in life. And how like you said, like how we show up, what we create, it's deeper than just like, I'm in my chaise lounge in a robe. You know what I mean? Like, though we love that, I love a good grape, I love a good feather, like it's beyond that. Can you talk to us about, just because I love this conversation, like how you prioritize your pleasure daily, or regularly, and like we talked about this a little bit, like how do you come back to it? How do you remember? Because I know it's like, I sometimes too, I'm like, yes, I'm inspired. And then, it goes away. So how do you have it like an intentional relationship to pleasure? What does that look like for you? Like, how do you keep coming back to that foundation and make it a foundation of your life?
Yeah, good question. Well, it's building a muscle, setting
Yes.
boundaries and waving that no flag loud and proud.
Yes.
No, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to go there. And it's okay, like to be on my own, doing something just for me. Again, it's something that, through practice, just like anything else, like a meditation, like a breath work, like learning a language, like playing an instrument, you just have to keep staying in the momentum, doing the things that resonate with you and make you feel in that expansive state, in that more conscious, higher vibration. Do more of those things. And that means when you're in those higher consciousness and vibration, some people and things and interests that used to be interesting, they will naturally fall away. And we may think that, oh, shoot, like, what did I do? Like, am I missing out? Or, people are not happy because they're not seeing you. But I believe once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
You can't go back to sleep. So just keep doing the things that that really bring you back home to your center, and find the people that are on that path and doing those things as well. For me, it's been radical self-care. I think as an American living in Europe and a mother, like I had to learn that big time. Like, yes, I can say no. Yes, I don't have to work all the time. Yes, I don't. Yes, yes to me. It's about saying yes to yourself. Because the more you can learn to say yes to yourself, what's going to light you up? What is the pleasure for you? then it will naturally come easily to say no to the things that you know is going to drain your energy, that's not going to light you up. And, you know, at the end of the day, we all have the same amount of time and we're all going to die in a minute. I mean, let's just be real. So, you know, I think, especially for me, you know, when I've come to my deep personal development and spiritual path, it was through the loss of loved ones. And I'm sure all of us have some story where it's questioned our mortality, whether it was a loved one or a pet or a job or just a way of living and being, like the past 2 years that we've, you know, the world turned upside down for a minute. It makes you question your mortality. And I really, truly believe that it's in those moments where we feel like it's like a total breakdown, that is where the breakthrough comes through. So in that breakthrough, it's so important to have the tools, practices, and have the support. For me, what's been a big part of my expansion and my journey is to have support, to know that I can't do this alone, to always have my own coach. I always have my own coach. I think I wouldn't be in integrity if I'm just like, oh yeah, I'm done, you know, like I'm good. Like I don't need to learn anymore. Like,
Yep.
no, not at all. Not at all. So I think it's just, yeah, having the support, having the tools, having the toolbox and just keep doing the things, like have like 1 minute practices, a breath work, an essential oil, like a song that you can turn to and just shake, like just like a 1 minute practice that you can rely on and come to that feeling of safety. That's what I say is important, so that you can really stay in that realm of expansion, possibility, and not contraction. Because let's be honest, that most of the stuff out there right now in the news and all the things, it's very contracting. It feels really heavy. So a lot of what I even tell my clients is like, don't start your day reading your email in the news. Why do you want to do that? Like, that's just that's going to put you right into a feeling and state of contraction. Like, can you start your day, the first 15 minutes or so, like either breath work, meditation, having a cup of tea, like do not look at your emails and the news, because that will bring you down. And they say, all the ancient sages and religions say that, it's in the morning that we're the most receptive. So whatever we start our morning in, like you can rest assured that that has an impact and influence on your nervous system, how you behave, how you react. So if you can just start your morning just in a little bit of peace, and just try it. I always invite my clients, try something for a week and then see if you notice a difference.
I love that. There's so many good places, and I'm like, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. So we'll have to do a part 2. I'm like, energy and this and that. But before we transition to where people can find you, I just want to pass the mic one more time. And is there anything else coming up for you about anything that we talked about, or anything that you're like, wait, Erica, we didn't talk about this, and I really feel, it's deep to me and I want to bring it up. I just want to pass the mic one more time to any like final things that, that you feel called to share with us today, if anything.
I think we touched on.
We did. We
went in. We went in deep.
So we're like, let's go into every topic.
You feel like we haven't touched upon, but I feel like somehow we touched on a lot. So
we really did.
Something that we didn't, or you want to go deeper. I feel like I'm always with these type of interviews. I'm always just go with the flow, and that again, that's that feminine being in the body and not in the head. I'm just, whatever was shared here, I'm just trusting that that's for the highest good of all your listeners. So I feel complete, but if there's something that you feel you would like to ask or go deeper, I'm open.
No, that's literally perfect. Yeah, I was like, wow, we talked about a lot. We went through a lot of different things. I seriously can't thank you enough for coming on. And I'm going to, of course, attach in the show notes where people can find you, how they could, learn from you. But I'd love for you to just call out your website, Instagram, wherever you like to, bring people to. Talk to us where we can find you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Erica. Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Come and find me, connect with me. Let me know that you heard this podcast. I'm at Leslie Saglio. And I also have a free checklist guide called 3 Secrets to Live on Purpose and in Your Feminine Power. So if what I've shared is resonating with you, if you are interested and curious on how to replace fear and anxiety with your innate power, and you're ready to make how you feel and what you want a priority, well, I've done it, and I know that you can too. So I believe Erica's going to drop that link in the show notes. That's just lesliesaglio.com/free gift. So love to connect with you. And yeah, thank you so much for having me, Erica.
Of course, thank you, and more to come. So thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you, seriously thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and on this podcast journey. And if you loved what we talked about today, and you know another human who could definitely benefit from what was discussed, I would so appreciate if you would go ahead and share this podcast with them. Don't forget, hit subscribe or follow so you never ever miss an episode. And the great news is you can always follow me, my work, my blog, my podcast on my website at www.wethelight.org. And hey, remember, life is so much brighter when we shine. I'll see you next time.